Have you ever come across an explanation that just clicks? Not because it's detailed or even careful, but because it's clear. It tells you what happened, who was responsible, and what needs to be done. And suddenly, everything feels like it fits together. There is no ambiguity, no hesitation, no loose ends. Just a single, coherent story. We usually take that feeling as a sign that we understand something. But clarity and understanding are not the same thing. Understanding often requires holding things that don't fully resolve. Multiple explanations, partial truths, conflicting perspectives. Clarity, on the other hand, can come from something much simpler. It can come from removing those tensions altogether. So the question is, what's creating that feeling? In the previous video, we looked at what literature does to the mind, how it expands our ability to hold multiple perspectives, multiple timelines, multiple interpretations, without collapsing them into something simpler. But there's another way meaning can be produced, not by expanding what we can hold together, but by reducing what we need to hold. One expands the complexity we can live with, the other reduces it until it becomes manageable. Both create meaning, but they do it in very different ways. Authoritarian discourse operates through reduction, and it's important to be clear about what that means. This isn't about a specific ideology. It's not tied to one political system, one country, or one group. It's a mode of communication, a way of organizing experience, a way of producing coherence. You can find it in political speeches, but also in institutions, classrooms, workplaces, even families. You can find it wherever complexity is resolved by narrowing what counts. Authoritarian discourse doesn't just describe the world. It organizes it in a very specific way. It presents itself as certain. It treats disagreement not as difference, but as error. It eliminates alternative interpretations before they can develop. And instead of inviting understanding, it establishes a fixed frame. Within that frame, things make sense. Outside of it, they stop making sense altogether. You can hear this in the language. The statements tend to be short, final. That's just how it is. There are no open questions, no sense that things could be otherwise. Complex situations are reduced to single causes, and the same phrases repeat again and again until they start to feel familiar, and familiarity starts to feel like truth. At this point, it's tempting to say, this works because people are misinformed, or manipulated, or irrational. But that misses something deeper. Understanding the world is difficult. It requires holding multiple possibilities at once. It requires tolerating uncertainty. It requires integrating past, present, and future into a coherent picture. That's cognitively demanding. And most of the time, we're not looking for complexity. We're looking for something we can hold. Authoritarian discourse reduces that demand. It removes the need to hold competing explanations. It removes the need to ask further questions. It removes the need to integrate. This has very specific effects on how experience is structured. It removes surprise. If everything is already explained, nothing really challenges the narrative. It flattens difference. Distinct events begin to feel like repetitions of the same story. Everything starts to point in the same direction, and it produces a powerful sense of certainty. Not because more is understood, but because less needs to be held. It feels stable not because it is true, but because it forbids alternatives. And that stability comes at a cost, because systems like this don't adapt. They become brittle. And when something happens that the narrative can't absorb, it doesn't bend. It breaks. Instead of asking what happened, why did it happen, what else could be going on, the system provides an answer in advance. And once that answer is in place, everything else is interpreted through it. Over time, the world begins to feel simpler than it actually is. Not because it is simpler, but because the range of possible interpretations has been reduced. From a PHET perspective, what we're seeing is a collapse of temporal integration. The past is simplified into a single story. The present is interpreted through a fixed frame, and the future is reduced to a single trajectory. A world that could be understood in many ways becomes a world that can only be understood one way. This is exactly where it contrasts with literature, where literature expands our ability to hold multiple perspectives. Authoritarian discourse eliminates them. Where literature introduces tension, ambiguity, and contradiction, authoritarian discourse resolves them prematurely. Where literature increases the complexity we can integrate, authoritarian discourse reduces it. Where literature helps us metabolize complexity, authoritarian discourse removes it. Once this kind of meaning is established, it becomes difficult to move beyond it, because the system doesn't just explain the world, it stabilizes it. Anything that complicates the narrative begins to feel like a disruption, not just intellectually, but experientially. It threatens the coherence that has been achieved. And this is why these narratives are often defended so strongly. Because they don't just organize information, they hold experience together. Identity depends on coherence across time, and these systems provide that coherence by narrowing it. So people defend them not only because they believe them, but because they make their world intelligible. This doesn't just happen at the level of individuals, it scales. Societies depend on the ability to hold multiple perspectives together. Different histories, different experiences, different possible futures. They don't collapse because of disagreement. They collapse when they can no longer integrate disagreement. This is what makes authoritarian discourse so powerful. It produces meaning quickly, it stabilizes experience, it reduces complexity. But it does so by limiting what can be integrated. And that makes it easier to act, but harder to understand. So the question is not just what is true, but something more fundamental. How much complexity can we hold without breaking? In the previous video, we saw how literature expands that capacity. Here, we've seen how meaning can also be produced by reducing it. And the future of our societies may depend on which of those strategies we rely on. If you'd like to follow where this goes next, consider subscribing. I am, therefore I think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.